What up? What up? We are back with yet another episode of the Maniaco podcast. Here we are. What do you got for us, man?
Oh, I mean, I was thinking a lot over the last couple hours since you and I worked out. We took that crack, dark Labz, and it gets you deep in thought, apparently. So I was listening to some Atmosphere. You know Slug from Atmosphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he represents Minnesota. And I was thinking, like, he represents Minnesota and how it brought up the fact that I remember just as a little kid, people representing, calling out their hometown or whatever, and I never had that pride, like that kind of like, oh, represent Detroit's the best, Detroit, and maybe that's because Detroit's not the best, I don't know, but I think if I was from New York, if I was from wherever, I didn't feel like that. And on the surface, that feels like a small thing, but I think it expands to a lot of things in my personality, and I think in yours too. Questioning popular belief and not necessarily going along with the program, I was thinking, like, the furthest back as a kid, everybody was into Pokemon. Like, everybody was into Pokemon, watching it and collecting cards, and they were in school trading, and I had zero interest. I just had zero interest. I was sitting on the sideline just watching it all. And it goes for everything. Like, not everything. I'm not like a total misfit, but from the music that I was into, I listened to, like, Immortal Technique and Vinnie Paz from Jedi Mind Tricks and R.A. the Rugged Man and all these people. None of my friends ever wanted to hear my music. It's like I was the odd man out with all of that. And the clothes that I wore to the movies that I was into. And so I don't know if it goes into opposition, like being oppositional and just not wanting to go with the program, or just having, coincidentally having a different taste of, like, everything from the popular. So you experienced some of that to a point, right?
Yeah, I thought of a lot of stuff while you were saying that. First thing I thought of is that when I was younger, you weren't even, like, allowed to say anything about Detroit here, because people we went to school with, that I went to school with, would be like, "You're not from Detroit. You're from Farmington Hills. You can't say Detroit." Like,
you're
and
a
it's
suburb
like,
kid. Yeah.
It's it's the suburbs. It's like, yeah, but dude, we were like Metro Detroit. You represent Detroit, and like they didn't get it, so you couldn't, like, say a word about Detroit, or they would act like you're perping. Like,
well, so did you wanted to represent? You were, like, into that idea of being a Detroit, like, hey, I'm from Detroit.
I think that I always knew people from like out of state and stuff, from, like, boarding school and stuff. So if people would say, "Where are you from?" my natural instinct would say, "I'm from Detroit."
Right.
And people around here, if they heard that, they'd call it out. "You're not from Detroit. You're from Farmington." Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm not going to tell people I'm from Farmington Hills because they've never heard of that. So I'm going to say Detroit. If you live in Metro Detroit, you represent Detroit.
Yeah.
But I never thought of, like, the stuff that we were into, like the music and everything, as being oppositional. I just thought about it more as we were kind of put up on game with a lot of things a lot of people weren't. We kind of were exposed to a lot of different, I think that's natural. Really, I mean, if someone has an older brother and they're up on certain things that get passed down to them, then they're going to, know about things that their friends don't know about.
Yeah. But it goes into,
and then we hung out with some people like like Jake or Lit, who like were into certain music and stuff that we gravitated towards.
Yeah, that's the music taste, and I go into even like we were your boy Jason's had a sleepover when we were really young, and he showed us that when you manipulate a dollar bill the right way, then you see the Twin Towers burning.
Oh yeah.
And talking about the Illuminati and all that. And it's like I'm thinking in terms of like where my mind went from there forward. Like I was very into conspiracies and questioning things and not always going with like the story that you've been told, not just politically or anything like that, just like in many aspects of my life. Fraternity life at Michigan State was huge. First of all, just going to games and having like college pride was huge. And I didn't have any. Like, I owned one Michigan State logoed shirt, and that was it. I never got into arguments about like who's the better sports team or which is the better school, all that stuff when there's all these rivalries going on. And then fraternity life. Never joined one, never had an inclination to join one, did not want to be part of. What I'm saying is like I didn't want to be part of the bigger group.
Yeah, but is that because you were rebellious, or is that because you were just comfortable without having to be part of a...
Honestly, I don't know if it was that I was comfortable. I was uncomfortable with the idea of being part of the group. I think that's what it was. It was like an anxiety. I don't know, social anxiety, but I did not want to be involved in a group in which I knew like people were going to give me orders and I would have to do things based on them telling me that I had to. I didn't have that in me. So, and I'm not saying that any of it's a problem. I'm just realizing it about myself that I probably am a little bit oppositional in some things, and I think it's probably helped me in a lot of ways. Like it's been not helped, but been beneficial. And then other ways it's probably hurt me because in a way it's probably a lot easier to just go with the program, than to be questioning or to leave yourself out of certain things and all that. Like easier in the sense of probably have more friends as a result of it. Like you'd be part of groups and be doing things and then there's the other part where it's like, yeah, but you can't really fake yourself, fake your personality and all that.
Yeah, I see it both ways, like it's kind of funny because I see it as I liked having an identity and being like part of a certain thing, but the things I identified with in itself were like the rebellious kind of things. So like skateboarding was the first thing that came to mind. Like and I remember that like our family had they even before I got high, I think they associated skateboarding with druggy like behavior or something. And,
they even said it to you. I think Dad probably brought that up plenty. And
before I got high.
I don't know, but maybe just like being a skateboarder has a certain connotation to it.
Yeah, it did. I mean, at least in our area, I guess it probably did. But is there truth to that? Yeah, I mean, I smoked weed with all the people I skated with, I guess. And then I remember when I first smoked weed, I was at a Halloween party, and I didn't get high. And I pretended I was high because I wanted to be like part of it. And then I remember going to school like feeling like I was the freaking man because like I was like part of this group that got high. Like I had an identity, like I'm part of like, remember Jason and all that. Like, yeah, like I don't think I got high for 5 times, and I pretended to because not that I was scared to admit I wasn't high, but because I felt like part of something that was exciting.
Well, why didn't you get high? Why were
I
you
don't think
trying?
I knew how to inhale it right or hold it in. I don't really know. They used to say, like when I was a kid, you don't get high the first few times. And I think it's just because I didn't know what I was doing really or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes for a lot of people when it comes to alcohol too, like pretending that you're drunk just to like as a teenager, like a young teen, like to say that you're drunk, and you know, it makes you feel like you're doing something. I've realized this about identity in the teenage years. Identity is something that you're searching for in your teenage years, and often you associate having an identity with doing things that you know are wrong. That's how people kind of correlate them. So that's why kids often do things that they know their parents wouldn't want them to do, because that gives them some kind of identity and some kind of feeling of being independent, of individuality.
A lot of our media, though, like promotes an image of what we're supposed to think is cool. Like even as a kid, like Wayne's World. Remember, like two stupid guys who like get these hot chicks who like, you know, just kind of like, I don't know, play music or whatever. Like we're always instilled an image on us about like what it means to be cool. The word cool was not like a very positive thing. You know, it didn't, like, at least then. Now, my idea, obviously, of what's cool is completely different, you know.
Your idea, but has the...
My idea.
Are you saying that the media's idea, or the way that it's being broadcasted, that idea of being cool is different too?
And that's probably gotten even worse.
It's gotten different.
Now it's like...
Wokeism and stuff is like I think that's kind of...
But now it's so weird. It's almost like punk rock now to have conservative values and just be like, it's like you're the outcast now if you have conservative. You're like going against the grain now.
Right.
If you have like a steady wife and two kids, and you're like, like you're almost rebellious to be like conservative now, to be what we thought wasn't cool. It's a very odd shift, dude.
Yeah,
like
there's definitely been a shift.
Like now it's like if you're like liberal or you're really just part of the mainstream. You're just being, you're part of all that Hollywood mainstream. You're not being rebellious. You're not against the grain to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like being against the grain to just not even have an opinion at all. You know, there are so many times where I want to say, like, if this thing wasn't talked about on the news, nobody would be talking about it because nobody truly cares.
Well, that's true.
But then we get to a point where it's such a topic of conversation that I think people feel like they need to make an opinion and take a side. And I'm like, what happened to just not knowing enough about something to not form an opinion, or just not caring enough to get involved in the debate in the first place? You know?
Yeah,
so
there's
many
not.
things.
Yeah, well, that's the power of the programming, and they hijack our consciousness by telling it. And it's funny because people who we know, let's say you're freaking super on one side, you're super on the other. Most of us have very similar values. They find the little differences and they expand it times 1,000. Like most of us, like let's say someone who votes a certain way, someone else votes another way. Most of their values are going to be pretty similar. It's I think overall the big values. I mean, they're experts at finding the little differences and making it seem like these are completely, different people and stuff. It seems like.
Doubt. So it's divide. It's divide and conquer. It's
divide. And I used to see it on the level in. It was funny because I thought about it. I was explaining once to Dave about how prison was, and how he pointed it out. How I was explaining the racial politics and how if you're white you're with the whites, and if you're black, you're with the blacks. If you're Mexican, you're with the Hispanics. And the cops are such experts; they have all the inmates against themselves, and they're not focused on what the cops are doing. And it's just like a little, it's like a little model of what it's really like out here. Like we're all pitted against each other, fighting with each other, not really focusing on the power grab of the politicians and what they're really doing, you know, while they have us all at each other's freaking throats.
Do they talk about politics and politicians and things in prison?
Well, dude, let's be honest. Nobody really cared about politics till 2016 when freaking Trump, like, nobody
it's become a different level of it. It's become a level where everybody talks about politics now. And like before that, like most people didn't care. Some people cared, I guess, were into it, but not everybody knew what was going on. Like I didn't know names of politicians or anything, or you just weren't tuned in. So I've talked to people who've been in prison since then, and they said like, yeah, like, you know, the whites are all fired up about Trump and this and that, and, you know, that kind of thing. But so I guess, yeah, they were probably paying attention in there since Trump's been part of the equation. Right. Mm-hmm. Do you have people in your life who you have very close friendships with, or, friendships, relationships with, that you disagree on those kinds of topics?
There's people in my life who I have relationships with who I would say we agree on most topics, but there's a few that we disagree with, like let's say the Israel thing. Like as you were saying, it's okay to not form an opinion. Like that's one of those things where I've like as a Jewish person have really not engaged with, to the point where I'm like, I know what's happening over there. I know exactly what's going on, and the whole world's anti-Semitic, and this. I don't like that. So those kind of things, like even a lot of people who agree with a lot of my views, like they're really fired up about that issue, and I find it like the safest bet to admit that I can't even get a straight story about what's going on here most of the time, let alone in the freaking Middle East, dude. Like, so I question everything that I'm told about that. I think it's a probably super complicated situation that both parties have done screwed up stuff with. That's probably my stance. And you can't say that to certain people.
No.
You can't say that. And I just admit, I don't know what's going on. You know, I don't know. It's complicated, and I question what we're told.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and not just question what we're told, but also to state the obvious when the obvious is there to let out, and not try to justify it just for your side to win. Because I think that we've already, so many people in that kind of debate have already created their side that they know is won before they even get facts straight.
For sure.
You know?
They think they know everything.
They know that their side would never do this or that, you know, do something wrong or do something immoral or this or that. And it's like, what? These are just people, human beings, who are capable of terrible things and capable of good things.
Right. And there could also be that there's just a lot of people who are victim to a horrible government, and there's just good people all over the place, and they've been really screwed.
That's right. It's much easier for people in their minds to categorize people as all one way or all another way. Mm-hmm. And so and that's something like that I used to question right away. It just seemed so obvious, and I don't know why people around me were saying these things like, Arabs are this way, or all the Jews should be this way.
Right.
Or it's like, what do you mean all?
Very strong stances.
Where but it's because in their head it's easier to organize things that way, and they don't realize that they should be questioning these things too.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing, well, yeah, because it might bring up some questions that they might have been wrong on some of their beliefs, you know.
So it's ego, for sure.
Yeah,
Tons
it's
of ego.
And then the other thing is, especially as a Jewish person, dude, like, I feel like we grow up from a very young age being taught that everyone hates us. Like, it's ingrained in us. Like, the Holocaust, everyone hates us. And I'm not saying there's not real hate or there's no truth to some of that. I don't know.
No.
But I always tell people, like, when I get out in the world, most people are really decent. Like, if you shut off the TV or the social media or whatever, and you're just out in the world dealing with people, most people are just thinking about themselves, trying to get by in the world. Like, I feel like most people have good hearts and they're just
I don't know why
right.
people want to be victims. You know, they want to be victims. They make posts on social media all the time as if they're being like targeted, and they've probably, I mean, most people who throw those things out have never actually been targeted or hated on in some kind of like real confronting way.
It's funny because I have. And I've been in prison with real Nazis who have swastikas tattooed all over them, and I've been hated on for that. And I've maintained my position that, yeah, it's real, and I dealt with that, but that's not most people in the world. That's not.
No.
I mean, most people are not skinheads in prison who think it's cool to hail Hitler and stuff. I mean, that's a very niche group. So I think we got to appreciate that. Yeah, there is real hatred or racism or this or that, but to make it out like this is most people, or like this, it's just this huge like soaring thing everywhere. I don't see it.
So how do you keep the relationships that you have with the people who you might really have disagreements with, and how do you avoid getting into like emotional emotional arguments?
The first thing I do is I have to keep each subject individually.
Yeah.
I'm gonna gauge how important it is. So, like, let's say it's somebody literally that's trying to affect my life, like pushing the COVID shot on me. That's something that actually affects my life. I'm going to speak up, and I'm not going to do, I'm actually going to engage with that. If it's something like this, I'm going to, like, let's say we know people who we might not agree with. I find it best just to listen and not let it get in the way of our relationship. I'll shut my mouth and let people even think I agree with them sometimes. I won't lie. I won't say I agree with you. I'll just listen. I'll just listen, and I'll just let them speak. And sometimes I'll ask some questions that are calm and collective, but I've learned that I don't get in a lot of these discussions with opposing views often, but I've learned if you get emotionally like heated up about politics or some kind of values or something like that, you'll never change anybody's mind.
No.
If you can't engage in a conversation, because you'll be the one to set the tone for a calm dialogue, and then maybe you can, change somebody's mind.
Well, I think it comes with, realizing what the relationship's for, the main purpose of the relationship, and if you really want to have that relationship, keep it focused on that, and not bring in things that are going to muddy it or get you guys further apart. Because I think what happens is people care about people a lot. Like, we care about our friends, we care about the people that we're our family, and we want to share our opinion with them and get them to agree with us on these things. And we have to realize, like, it's okay for them to think what they think and us to think what we think, and not get into it, because we're going into a losing battle.
When I engage with somebody and I feel an emotional response from it, and I feel like my tone gets higher, or I'll yell or something, which doesn't really happen, but it has, obviously. Not obviously, but it has. I feel like I lost. Like they got exactly what they wanted, is to get in between me and my loved ones about this stuff, and I feel like I've lost. Right. So I try and keep that in mind. Like, they want us separated. They want us arguing. I know they want chaos. They want these disagreements, and they do nothing to bring people together. And so, I mean, I just try and keep that in mind. And, most of the people, as I said, that we deal with are loving. Like, you could have all the political differences in the world, but you and I know, like, when our family gets together, dude, it's a nice time. Like, generally.
It is, for sure. But then there are moments where, and you've seen me, like, I'll raise a question that I just shouldn't have even gotten into, because I know the person who I raised it to can't help himself but respond very strongly.
Now, how do you feel after that? You feel I shouldn't have done that?
I did it again. Yeah, I feel like, oop, I did it again.
I should have
fell
held my
into
tongue.
the trap. I couldn't help myself.
It is a trap.
It's a trap.
Yeah, it's a trap, 100%. And I know people personally who family members cut each other off over this stuff.
Right.
And stuff that's so trivial, where it's like, dude, the time with our loved ones is so precious. There's no way in heck you're going to look back in 15 years when that person's either there or gone and say, I'm so glad I freaking argued with him about Donald Trump or something stupid. Like,
right.
like how about these people we don't even know? And I mean, these people on TV, they're like Disney characters for all I'm concerned with. It's like,
we don't know them, but we'll either hate them or absolutely love them. And we've never met them. We've never had a conversation. None of that. It's absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's powerful, huh?
Super powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what celebrity is. It's very powerful. It makes you,
That's why I think the more I'm conscious about what I'm putting in the media and my ears and it's like there's a lot where you could control up to a point, but if you repeatedly listen to stuff and listen to stuff and listen to stuff, dude, it'll start hijacking your consciousness. And you will start, it will have an effect on you,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people care about the effect that it has. I think they kind of enjoy it. Gives them something. I don't think
they know.
Well, I think it gives them something to do, Gives them something to stand for. It's a part of it. In a way, it makes them part of a group, a team. Yeah. It's their team
there's
sport.
Something attractive about that. There's something probably addicting about the emotional response that it gives. Even the fear and the anger. Like, dude, remember during COVID, they put a count of the dead people on TV? But people, they couldn't stop watching it, dude. Even something horrible that evokes a negative emotion, it seems to be addicting.
Right.
Right. And I don't know. Men chase women and they get rejected all the time, and they still have it in them to keep on with the chase despite rejection, right? Despite a negative response for that one time that you might hit,
Right.
I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
Is that related? Is that related? I don't know.
I don't know. I think, are you thinking about making bids to women or something?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. No, it's an interesting time, that's for sure. And we started out by talking about questioning things and being a little bit out of the popular, belief system, and talking about music a little bit.
Yeah, I grew up and we were always told that Jews are supposed to question things. Jews are supposed to question things. You've heard that? We're supposed to question part of the Torah, and they have debates about it, and everything is you're supposed to question. And then when we question, you're not supposed to question.
Well, question about certain things, but not others, right?
Yeah. Well,
what questions have you asked that you've been totally shut down on? The response has been very, very poor for you. Like you just said, like, I'm supposed to ask some things, but not others. Like, I guess right away, as a kid, you were questioning. Well, you didn't just question, you did things that were oppositional, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just you asking questions like a kid asks, their parents something. It's like you were acting out in ways that were just oppositional.
Like our family would say, like, some of them, I've heard them say, like, when you were a kid, you would, you could say someone would say the sky is black, and you would say it's blue or something like you would. And I recall being in a lot of arguments and being, I'm sure, argumentative and everything like that. I'm sure I was extremely difficult. And
do you think you have any of that today still?
I think that I can take a step back and see that I would be a difficult person to date, probably, maybe, in a sense. But that's more because I do have strong convictions or opinions, but I'm also more, I say that more because I'm very regimented, and I don't bend out of, like, a lot of my routine and regimen,
Right.
But do I think today? I don't think I have that. I don't have that anger that I had. Where I think that I don't. You're only asking me to appraise myself, so I don't know what others see, but I would hope that I don't have that. Where people say, like, oh, he just argues for no reason or something.
Right.
I like to try and be reasonable. Yeah.
Well, you also probably see that it doesn't get you anywhere to just keep arguing. It keeps making you feel bad, so therefore why are you going to keep engaging in something that as a result makes you feel bad? I'm sure we both will, and everybody does, doesn't agree with somebody, might even judge that person in some way based on what they just said, but that doesn't mean you need to actually engage in letting them know that you think they're wrong, or letting them know that, they're coming off as a certain way. It's like we've learned to just nod our head and be like, okay. And sometimes that's just the best way to go about it, because you've
I do think I have a mentality where I'm definitely question, but I don't think it comes from a bad place. Like somebody could send me something to look at politically, and my first response will be like, I don't even know if that's real. Like, I don't even know what to believe. Like, that could all be fake. And I don't think, like, it's not from an angry place, or it's from, like, I guess just a place where these people have no credibility with me anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, they don't. Yeah. They don't have credibility, and a lot of things are fake, and we've seen that a lot of things are fake. But again, if it goes with if it's added data that's going to make your side win, then you don't even care where it's from.
Yeah.
You know?
I try and be very compassionate, dude, and be like, these people who disagree with me are just kind of sold a bill of goods or whatever the saying is, you know, like they've kind of been misled and they don't know any better, and maybe they're sick people and, you know, whatever it is. So I try and be loving and compassionate, because it's just bad for my soul if I trash people or, you know, talk ugly about people. I'm trying not to.
Yeah, it doesn't benefit you. It only brings you down, right?
I want to be on the side of light, dude. Like, I want to be on the godly side where I practice spiritual principles when I'm dealing with these things.
Right.
And getting angry and being in fear or calling people, you know, names or whatever, I walk away from those conversations when I fall short feeling like really ugly, like feeling like, man, why did I do, like, that was not who I am to the core. Like, that was bad for my soul to talk that way or get thrown off my square. You know what I mean?
It's a consistent and continuous practice, you know, to keep questioning your own stuff, your own ways of responding to people, or even thinking about people. I mean, I don't want to even be thinking about somebody in terms of like thinking that person's bad or good or this or that. It's like, I want to be fair, and I don't want to have a black and white view of somebody.
You're in a therapy world. Do you ever feel, now you work for yourself, which is freaking sick. Did you ever feel any pressure to conform to a certain ideology in the therapy world, or did that never affect you?
No, it never affected me. Like, for instance, during COVID, people weren't seeing patients in person. And I got to a point probably like a month after everything happened when I realized, like, I'm okay, that I was offering to still see people face to face. Like, yeah, we'll sit a little bit apart, but if you need me, I'm going to be here for you. And then even today, like, people got so comfortable, therapists, seeing people virtually, that now COVID's over, right? I mean, people are still getting COVID, whatever that means, but therapists continued to only see people virtually. Like, really?
Well, yeah, they found it was more convenient, probably.
Convenience is definitely not more meaningful to the therapeutic relationship.
I agree with you. The same thing with the AA meetings. We're the only meeting who didn't go back, and it's just like people get so used to it, and you know, some of them are still even scared of COVID.
Right.
They just never let it go, where they were willing to take any kind of risk. They just want to like live like that and kind of be mentally wherever they're at in their head.
Well, it's not just not taking risks. It's convenience. It's saying, this is easy for me to just log on from my home and do this. Yeah. And we know that there's a lot more meaning in being in person. The kind of energy you get from somebody and being in front of them and seeing their whole body language and all of that is huge. And I know child therapists who just see their kids virtually. It's like, no way would I want to set a kid up in front of a screen which is they are used to for distracting their brains all the time, so it's going to be associated with distracting, and expect that kid to be able to like pay attention, you know? They play like virtual games or things like that, which play therapy is a great thing, but in person.
Our doctor's office, I remember during all of COVID, they had signs up saying they didn't want you there if you had any of these following symptoms. And I remember thinking to myself, since when can you only go to a doctor if you're healthy? This is insane. The whole point of going to the doctor when we grew up was if there was a problem, and they wouldn't see people, and it was like, dude, our doctors became just these telemedicine billing out. It was crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And I lost a lot of I guess respect. I don't know, for lack of a better word. It was for our like whole medical. It was.
I think trust and respect. I think it's
a lot
all
of
the
trust.
above.
And then again, I try and be compassionate. I'm like, people are just scared. They're human beings, and I think they're just living in fear. But is that an excuse?
That's one thing. It would just be a lot, and it's not about like be more like me, but question things a little more. Like go that extra step of looking something up, as opposed to just agreeing with the thing that you've heard.
Yeah.
Look into it. And if people had looked into the numbers and seen about, the young people and how little it affected them, healthy young people and all that, it's just, there were so many signs.
Here's the other thing, though, dude. Like, and I try and be really compassionate about this. You and I, like, we might listen to certain podcasts or independent journalists or streams of information, and then we get into it with people who have literally had one stream of information only, and they have no clue there's even anything else out there to look at and to listen to.
Well, if you're talking like people who watch MSNBC or CNN,
sure, that's
right?
That's an easy example.
And then they'll say, "Well, what? Do you watch Fox News? I mean, that is crazy." And it's like, no, I don't think that any of them are good.
Correct.
Like, they all suck.
They all suck.
They all suck, and they all have their own agendas, and they all have reasons to be lying.
Yeah.
So don't listen to any of them, and go, like, find other sources of information. Big networks are not going to be the place.
No. The fact that a news network has a candidate is insane. I mean, that's nuts. That a news network has a candidate they back is freaking insane. So, yeah, I just think they're all on the same team, owned by the same people, just laughing at us. I don't think there's any difference, No, but, so I don't know. What do you think? Do you think do you see yourself as rebellious or anything?
Yes. I see myself as clearly having a pattern of, in a lot of situations, being the odd man out for potentially, and that's the thing of not knowing the motive. Why?
So do you feel comfortable being the odd man out, or is that scary for you?
I think it's been both, not scary. I think that I enjoy and like the fact that I am more open-minded about a lot of things, and therefore, ask questions and enjoy doing certain research or listening to certain things. It's kind of like I'm choosing to expand my horizons a little bit.
I find it scary to speak the truth to people who disagree with me.
Well, that's why I got into the other conversation, which is that's why I don't engage with people a lot about those kinds of topics.
Right.
I mean, certain things I've just realized, like, it's not worth it. But you're right. When you do, yeah, it's not comfortable, right?
Right.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebellious, though. I mean, I wasn't like as a kid, for instance. Like, I never did anything like really bad. It was just kind of a pattern of a way of thinking. Just a patterned way of thinking, and thinking a little differently, I feel. And maybe that's just within me, feeling like I'm thinking differently than others, when a lot of other people think this way too.
Yeah.
Might be a universal feeling there, of feeling a little different, feeling a little
You feel
odd.
like you carry any anger in your life?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Probably when it comes to certain people, specifically, like, we create relationships, and our experiences with those relationships will add up, and sometimes there are things that are just, that you'll have contention with somebody when certain topics come up, or whatever. Sure.
And you resent them. You carry a resentment against it.
Well, it's not like I'm always feeling like that or thinking about that, but then certain things might come up that will remind me. And that's what I know to avoid with those people, right?
So I have a question. So as a therapist, how would you guide somebody to let go of resentment or anger they carry towards someone?
I think we need to talk about what the resentment is and discover it a little bit, talk about it, actually let it out. Because sometimes when you talk it over, like you actually go through it and unwind it a little bit, or unknot it,
Yeah.
you start to realize more about the process of you thinking it, and you'll be like, why am I even tripping over that? Give it less power that way. But then there are certain things that may be like very relevant to be pissed about, and things that have happened to you when you've been wronged or when you've been mistreated, this or that. And so, I kind of take it to, well, like you would, what part have you played in this? Do you continue to play a part in that? What do you have control over and what don't you? And let's identify those things.
Do you find that there's appropriate times to be angry?
Definitely.
Not that. What
It's
I mean
important
is,
to
of
experience.
course, people will be angry. Do you think there's ever a green light to continue being angry? Do you think there's ever where it's appropriate to tell someone, like, I get why you're angry, I'd be angry too, I think it's okay that you're angry? Like, basically, it's okay to stay angry about that.
To stay angry? No. I mean, at a certain point, you need to decide if the anger is better than the alternative to that anger. So, is it benefiting you more to be angry, or would it benefit you more to let it go and move forward in whatever way that means? So whether that means dropping the person who's in your life who you're associating that anger with, maybe that would be the right option. But if you care about somebody so much, and that person is constantly, bringing up those feelings for you, then you need to figure it out with that person, So, yes, initially I think that anger is important to feel.
Yeah, I think it's there for a reason.
To continue it, depends how long you want to live like that. It's up to you, but I wouldn't want to live in that way.
Well, here's the thing about anger that I discovered for myself, and maybe you could say you disagree or not. I learned that when I did my fourth step and I listed out all my resentments, I came to discover that there was fear behind every single one of them. That there was always fear behind anger. That I had no reason to be angry unless I was scared of something. And to give like a very basic example of that would be like my girlfriend screaming at her daughter for running out in the street and getting angry at her, but she's not really angry. She's terrified that something is going to happen to her. Or, like if a girl cheats on me and I'm freaking pissed at her, I'm really scared. There's a layer behind it of fear.
There is. Initially, there probably is, but when it keeps happening, let's say repetitively, then you're going to start to get really angry and frustrated. And that's a pretty good reason to be angry.
But couldn't I say that you're also really scared?
Sure, it's both.
Right.
But yes, and you have to. I think that being scared and relaying that you're scared when somebody is doing something, it sometimes doesn't get the point across, or maybe perceived doesn't get the point across as much as if you show your anger towards it, right?
Right.
Like when you're trying to correct a kid's behavior, you saying, I'm just really worried that you're going to get hurt. That's nice, but maybe throwing a little bit of, you can't do that.
Right.
It's upsetting me that you keep doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll get through to the kid a little more.
That's firm parenting, though. I don't see that as anger. That's more strong, like firm parenting than I see as anger. Do you believe we all play a part in everything?
Yes, it's hard for me to say in everything. I don't, because
Sure.
anytime I hear blanket statements like that, I want to say no, probably not 100%.
Right.
Because
I do.
Yeah, I don't
Because
know
I
if
do
that's-
because like even the most extreme example I could think of, like let's say some kid was molested by his uncle when he was real little, like it would be your first instinct to think, not yours, but to think like that kid doesn't play a part in that. You know, there's nothing the kid did wrong. But I think the part sometimes we don't see is that we have a responsibility to treat the trauma maybe, and that's the part we play if we let it go untreated as an adult. You know, like,
Well, that's an if though. So that's not really an answer to that question, because you're adding something more to that scenario. So let's say that just happened to that kid, and that kid immediately comes forward and lets somebody know. Now.
No. We're talking about we're talking about anger. We're talking about playing a part in all the things that we're angry about. So like let's say somebody, I'm thinking of like somebody who's doing a fourth step, and they list that they were molested by their uncle as a kid, and they say, well, I can't find my part in that. And my response would be, well, you're not a kid anymore and you're still angry about that. Your part is that you have let this anger go untreated and this trauma that you had in your life without dealing with it until now. You know, do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. To play some devil's advocate, let's say that let's go back again to that scenario. Uncle does something terrible to a kid. So, of course, the mother of that child, once she finds that out, is very angry.
Right.
You know, what part does she have to play in it?
Did she allow it to happen?
No.
I mean,
These are the tough
know.
ones. These
I
are
don't
the
know.
tough ones. I know. Well, I guess you can keep. Listen,
I'm not
if you-
saying that I can personally figure out everybody's part in everything, but what I am saying is that by going through the fourth step, I realized that I played a part in every single thing that happened in my life. And I think if you search deep enough, you also will see that anybody could find their part in any situation.
Well, I think it's a good exercise, because what it's saying is basically I'm not a total victim and this didn't all just happen to me, and I can take some responsibility and take matters into my own hands, therefore, to say, okay, I screwed up here, I'm going to change my way, and that kind of allows you to move forward from that situation a little better. But I think there are some tough situations out there where it is very difficult, if not like impossible, to find the part that you played. I think sometimes you might even need to manufacture a part that you played in something in order to move forward from it. Just so that you can say, hey, okay, here's something that maybe I was a little responsible for. This is the amount of control that I could have in this situation, and maybe if I'm able to control this part of it, then I'll be able to find some conclusion and move forward from this, some resolution.
Right, that makes sense. But the other thing is, it's also saying that until I stop looking out at other people and look within myself, I'm never going to get rid of this resentment. Because resentment blocks me from looking within, because it keeps me looking out, at other people. Like, another example I give people a lot is like when I went through the fourth step and I had Larry on there for leaving mom, and I thought, I don't have a part in that. Like, I have no part in that at all. He left mom when she was sick, and he wasn't there for her when she was fighting brain cancer, and it was like impossible for me to see that I had a part in that. How could I? And then when I prayed about it, the answer was clear as day. I wasn't there for Mom when she was sick. I mean, I was in my addiction, doing the same thing, really, that I was mad at him about. I'm not saying that's going to be the answer for everybody, but it showed me that I can find a part, even if it's not directly related to that exact incident, that the way I've acted, too, in ways in my life. Like, there's always a part we could find within ourselves. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I think it's kind of okay for you to be disappointed with yourself, angry with yourself as well as with him. You know, it's like you added one more person to the list of being angry at. And that's
I certainly, no, there's nowhere in AA that says no one ever did you wrong. Oh, there's plenty. It never says in the book, these people didn't do you wrong. What it says is that we put out of our minds the wrongs they did, and we look at our own mistakes. Meaning, they did you wrong, sure, but if you want to get over that resentment, you got to stop looking at them and look at yourself.
Well, I also think it's important not to confuse, like, for instance, forgiveness, right? Like that's a huge, to be able to forgive and forget, or forget, but there are moments in which do not forgive and do not forget, because if you do, you might just get burned again. And you got to be very careful to protect yourself sometimes from not going into the same patterns, or not trusting somebody who isn't worth trusting, you know? So people who you know, we're talking about resentments and anger and all this stuff, like, if you've been abused, don't just be too quick to forgive the person who abused you, because you very well may just go back into that person's hands and get abused again, right?
I don't know that I agree. I think that it depends what your definition of forgiveness is, because if you were abused and you can forgive them because you really realize they're a sick person, you can still forgive them without opening yourself up to trust them again.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, is not opening yourself up. Not opening yourself up to getting hurt again, you know, to putting yourself... No,
you got to have... I think we have to have peace in our life, and we got to strip away anything that gets in the way of us having peace. And anybody who we're not a doormat.
Right.
We are not a doormat. We don't crawl in front of anyone, and we might forgive them, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be open to being hurt again. We know who we're dealing with still.
That's what I'm saying. Know who you're dealing with.
I might forgive you because you're a sick person and you did me wrong, but you're still a sick person. It's that hasn't changed, you know. And I'm not dealing with sick people, you know. Yeah. So.
Well, and not expecting that person, you know, it's really hard to forgive. It's like really hard to forgive somebody who did something super terrible to you, who doesn't show any remorse or show any care to take responsibility for their actions either, you know?
But does not forgiving them entail you staying angry?
Does not forgiving them entail you staying angry?
Yeah.
It's a good question. Maybe certain situations, if
I can't afford to be angry.
Right.
You know, that's deadly. Because that only hurts me.
Right.
It takes up space in my head if I'm angry.
Right.
While the other person not spending a second thinking about me, chances are.
And even if they are.
You know? Even if they are. Yeah.
Well, fair enough. My thoughts were very jumbled today. I was a little... I don't know if it's that man. It didn't have me... I wish it had me cognitively very there, but I felt a little like my neurons weren't quite matching up with each other. So...
Came out great.
I apologize if I stated anything that sounded a little mumbled. Little
Do you
mumbo
treat your
jumbo.
patients on this crack?
No, I don't see patients after I've taken crack. I've made a
full
firm
disclosure, everybody.
Yes.
No crack patients.
Yes. No strong pre's or strong fat burners right before I see clients. That's important.
That is
Because it'll make me start to talk a bunch of nonsense and not be able to formulate my thoughts very well. So,
No, this is a great podcast, bro. Great podcast. So,
well, all right.
everybody hit the like button. God bless all of you, man. And let's get this dang muscle. Hope you're enjoying. Leave a comment, too. Hope you're enjoying the Maniaco podcast. All right. We're out.